Right, back with you here on the Newsfeed PM. Thanks for staying on. Traditional leaders are calling on politicians to stop interfering in royal family affairs. This as some royal leaders are pushing back on those that they believe are interfering for selfish interests. This follows concerns that some politicians, especially in the Northwest and the Free State, are getting involved in royal succession battles. Joining us now, Kgosi Thabo, Seatlholo, chairperson of the National House of Traditional and Khoi-San leaders. Kgosi, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time this afternoon. My conversation with the Khokta minister yesterday would have indicated that there is good working relationship between the House of Traditional Leaders as well as forums for majesties as far as what needs to be done. Why the pushback from some quarters of government involvement?
Thank you very much, and greetings to the viewers at home. You would know that some of us as traditional communities, we hold some land that municipalities would want at some time, or there are some mineral deposits whereby some politicians would have an interest in. And if they don't see that the traditional leader is standing with his community in terms of following due process and doing what is due for the community, they would start now pushing for instability and wanting to bring their own people. So we had to put it out there and clearly that they should stop meddling in the affairs of royal families for the sake of their own selfish interests.
Yeah, the politicians would have come, especially from the main political parties at your Imbizo this past week, and a commitment was made by the politicians, but also by the minister, largely members of parliament, that they will be pushing harder for a review of Chapter 12 of the Constitution. How do you find this commitment, and do you place any value in what they would have said?
Well, there's value in it, but as you would know with politicians, you cannot say you trust them 100%, but in terms of the commitments that they have made, our responsibility is to ensure that they follow through, because there are pieces of legislation that has to go through the Customary Initiation Act, the TKLB, Traditional Leadership Khoi-San Bill, which has to recognize the Khoi-San communities. So all those pieces of legislations, they need to go through Parliament, and we need to make sure that they are fast-tracked. You would have seen during the national dialogue some unhappiness with some of the Khoi-San communities about the lack of participation and generally recognition in the country. But also on issues of initiation, the current law does not really help the communities who are practicing the act. It's inconsistent. So the intention is to ensure that when the pieces of legislation arrives in Parliament, they are able to be processed as a matter of agency, but also to unlock some of the development initiatives in our communities. You would know that we are sitting with a lot of unemployment, both for those who have been to school, be it higher learning education institutions, or even those who have been there. It doesn't matter, but both of them, we are sitting with a lot of unemployed youth who have almost given up. So we are looking at all sorts of legislative means to ensure that we are able to unlock those economic opportunities.
So the minister, or at least the department, seems to think that one of the major thing that needs to be addressed as far as what you're raising now is concerned, unemployment, is to decentralize the economy to rural areas. So you prevent things like urban migration, but you put money there and drive things like infrastructure development, so better roads, better infrastructure, better facilities that will keep especially the youth from migrating to urban areas, but rather find value in being in their rural areas, because those areas are being developed. What strike you about that approach, and what do you think could certainly work there?
No, you see, even if all people were to move to urban areas, it does not help, because our people from rural areas are sleeping with rats in Alexandra. It's not as if there's something that they're getting. The system is clogged in Johannesburg where you are. So, I mean, it tells you that you need to do something about rural areas. You need to make sure that all that land that is lying fallow, you are able to put it back to production. Hence, we had some of the farming organizations to also look at potential collaborations to make sure that that land is able to get into production and our people are able to make a living out of it. There are many initiatives by both young people and our women and men in different rural areas to make sure that they drive the small economic activities in our areas. But the opportunities are very hard to come by. So the intention is to strike that balance because the urban areas primarily rely on rural areas. But I think only for the commercial farmers who are able to produce and put their products into the urban areas. So we also need to follow through because you would know that rural areas, our villages, we live side by side with those commercial farmers. So the partnership is needed so that we can start being understudies and partnering where possible so that we can also gradually get into those markets.
Yeah. The fact that I suppose at this point we are still talking about plans around the review of the white paper on local government before we can get a clearer sense of how rural communities, but particularly traditional leaders, can become a part of decision-making on the flow of, for example, capital project funds. And they are not just spectators, but they can influence resources. What can be done in the interim?
In the interim, I think it's a leadership and relationship issue. There is no professional relationship between our district municipalities and what you would call the local houses. It means district houses where traditional leadership, let's say in Ugu district, they are able to meet with the district municipality there and jointly look at the development initiatives. Remember, from time immemorial, we were not just confined to issues of presiding over cases. We were responsible for developmental issues. So post-1994, we were confined into that little space whereby we are unable to unleash our full potential. It's more like the municipality has the full responsibility of making sure that the development. But I think we can see now, 28 years later of the municipalities, that they are not fully capable of unleashing that economic activities in rural areas. So we need to partner, but by partnering, we need to deal with the relationship issues. The municipalities must speak to traditional leaders on what do they think would be best to make sure that their people are able to access. Also, the issue of parity. You would see in a lot of municipalities whereby development is one-sided. It would go to certain areas and not go to certain areas. So those are some of the interim issues we need to look at to ensure that there's parity. Even if there's small budget, can we make sure that everybody gets a piece of it and not only look at it from the political side to say those councillors from that side of the town, they hold power, therefore everything will go there. So I think as traditional leaders, we would be able to bring that balance in between.
Yeah. Are you happy with the commitments that are being made by this sixth administration as far as reforms of matters that traditional leaders have been raising for years? Take, for example, the question of the upkeep of palaces of the other kings or other majesties outside of the KZN one, which I'm told that one is legislated in the KwaZulu-Natal laws. But now there is seemingly a conversation with Treasury around budget allocation for the upkeep of the other palaces. Number two, the whole question of the handbook that has been agreed upon, currently being costed on how I suppose the working tools can be afforded to traditional leadership. The agreement around protection, I believe the Deputy President as well as the Minister of Police agreeing that certainly there will be protection given, but the funding model is something that still needs to be interrogated.
Well, to a certain degree, we are happy, but we are more of a pressure group on behalf of traditional leaders and traditional communities as a house. So our responsibility is to consistently apply the pressure instead of just saying we are happy because they've said they will do this and that. But on the other hand, at least the minister this time has given timelines as to when will the handbook be brought to the table and approved. When will the palaces start being built? But also we need to engage the provinces, as you said correctly. The issue of the Zulu Kingdom has to do with the provincial government. So other provincial governments, they need to step up for their own kings. Because sometimes our people would say only the Zulu monarchy is taken seriously, but it's the provincial government that is taking them serious. It's not necessarily the national government that is providing those resources. So the Northwest, Mpumalanga, Free State, and so forth, they also need to come to the party to make sure that what happened in the past in terms of stripping of the dignity of our royalty by the colonial and apartheid government, we are able to bring it back, speaking to the preamble of our constitution in terms of recognizing the injustices of the past. We cannot recognize them for the sake of recognizing them. We need to make sure that we do something to come with some sort of redress. So looking at those palaces to refurbish them and all of that, it's part of redress so that our African people can get their dignity back.
Yeah. And then finally, if I let you go, I mean, one of the other issues, of course, is that of remuneration. The Commission has dealt with this. I believe it sent it to the President. The President has identified gaps. Are you in agreement with the gaps identified by the President, which I believe would need to be relooked by the Commission and be brought back to the President at least by the end of September?
Yeah, you see, some of the gaps has to do with the age of pension and the mechanisms for the medical aid. Remember, as traditional leaders, we are public office bearers, like the president himself, the ministers, the MECs, and so forth. So sometimes those policymakers or the bureaucrats, for that matter, to avoid doing the right thing, they would want to push us to GEMS, which is largely a scheme that is used by public servants or civil servants, but we are not civil servants, we are public office bearers. So those are the gaps that needs to be closed to make sure that there's parity in terms of other public office bearers. You would see the case of the magistrates that have taken the commission, including the president, to court. They are complaining that there's some imbalance. The judges and other public office bearers have been remunerated accordingly. But when you look at the magistrates and the traditional leaders, we are far below in terms of what has been given to others. So I think they're just trying to deal with that imbalance. And I think that's what the president is also trying to address. So we have agreed with the minister and the presidency that we will give them the due time to deal with the gaps. But by the beginning of November, we will be back in the offices to get the necessary answers.
Your Majesty, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on this afternoon. That is Kgosi Thabo Seatlholo, chairperson of the National House of Traditional Leaders, and Khoi-San leaders. They were the outcome of that imbizo.